say, coming in here, seeing all of you, listening to the music, joining in the prayer, it makes me feel very much at home for Ghana.
The British High Commissioner to Ghana, in his address, thanked Ghana High Commission for allowing him to meet the Ghanaian community in the UK. He also thanked all present for taking time out to attend the forum. Dr. Westcott stated that the purpose of his meeting with the Ghanaian community in the UK was to outline issues such as British foreign policy for 2009, Ghana-UK relationship, and the work of speaking on support for UK foreign aid, encouraging international financial institutions to continue to lend to developing nations, and tackling the effect of climate change, the British High Commissioner said.
So, the UK itself has pledged to maintain its own level of foreign aid, despite the growing pressure on our public spending. And Gordon Brown is very serious about that. He is deeply committed to ensuring that the UK fulfills its Gleneagles commitments agreed at the Gleneagles Summit in 2005 to continue increasing our levels of aid, and we have therefore pledged to maintain our aid levels despite the downturn. We will be encouraging the international financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, to continue, in fact, to increase their lending, particularly to the poorest countries, and to examining the structures of those institutions, give the poorer countries more of a say to restructure the governance of those international institutions. And thirdly, we want to be sure that despite this crisis, we don't forget about major global challenges such as climate change. And we need to look for solutions to the financial crisis which help address those kind of global challenges rather than make them worse, exacerbate them. That's the kind of international foreign policy context within which UK-Ghana relationships take place. And I should emphasise that in all those areas, we are very conscious that the UK alone cannot do that much without working closely with others, and in particular, working closely in international institutions.
In his speech, His Excellency went on to highly commend Ghana for the smooth election that took place in December 2008. To this, Dr. Westcott said,
I think the highlight of the past year that I've been in Accra was the Ghanaian elections. This plays very directly into a number of the policy issues I was just describing, because Ghana has set a benchmark, not just for the rest of Africa, but more widely than that, of how to conduct a democratic election. And throughout the process, which, as you all know, went ultimately to 3 rounds, if you include the election in time, for any democracy to have an outcome that was so close as to be less than half a percentage point, barely 40,000 votes out of 9 million votes cast, and to peacefully accept the narrowest of margins, and for a governing party to say, okay, we lost, and hand over power peacefully to the opposition. That is remarkable even in a developed democracy. And it speaks very strongly of the maturity and the robustness of your democratic institutions. I served in Washington, D.C. before I went to Accra, and I was there in the year 2000, when the US also went through a nail-biting, wafer-thin margin election. It took them months. What you achieved in a few days. And I was really impressed that all the institutions played their role, they fulfilled their functions, and people trusted them and they accepted it. The Electoral Commission counted the votes. The Electoral Commission announced the results, people accepted that. The courts were brought in, they played their role, and people accepted them. Well, the court case may or may not be relevant, it's for the courts to decide how to handle that. And even the President played a role saying the outcome will be decided by the Electoral Commission, listen to what the Electoral Commissioner says. And the police and the armed forces kept the peace. They played, I think, what was generally accepted to be an impartial role, allowing the voters to vote. That's what they were there to do. And to, so far as they could, avoid intimidation. And when all this said and done, it was peaceful. It was no serious outbreaks of violence took place. And it was a tremendous achievement, and I take my hat off to the Ghanaian people.
His Excellency urged Ghana to use its stable democracy and economy to influence other African countries through ECOWAS and the AU to ensure peace and stability across the African continent.
But with Ghana at the heart of West Africa, I'm more confident that sort of opening of stability will evolve because you've set that example. Spreading that example wider across Africa, to Central Africa, to Southern Africa, to Eastern Africa, is going to take a bit more time. But I would say, I believe Ghana has a very important role to play in ECOWAS, in the African Union, in being proud of the example you have set and setting it as a benchmark for others. And that, I think, would be a major step forward for the continent.
On Ghana-UK trade relations, His Excellency was full of praise for the growth in trade. His Excellency spoke on how the UK aims to maintain progress in Ghana. This, he said, will include aid programs.
I talk to businessmen here, British investors, and they say, well, you know, what is the political situation like in Ghana? And I say, it's good. It's good. You change of government, but people know what the policies are. People have accepted the result. It is a safe place to invest. And that is important for the second aspect of our relationship, which is trying to help develop prosperity in Ghana as much as here. Because if you do well, we will do well too. And we want to try and encourage growth, even with the threat of this recession coming up. And we do that in a number of ways. Our aid program for Ghana, we are sustaining at something near £80 million a year. And that will continue from last year through this year as well. And in fact, we've been able to help the new government by bringing forward some of that money. We can't increase the total amount, but we can provide the cash earlier in the year to help the government over what is quite a tight fiscal situation in Ghana itself. And a lot of that money is provided, about 70% of it, as budget support. It is in practice cash that we give to the Ghanaian government because we trust the government to use it sensibly, to use it in ways that will benefit the people.
On the Millennium Development Goal, Dr. Westcott had this to say.
Your progress towards the Millennium Development Goals continues good. We'll see how it goes at the end of this year, but the investment is still going into the health sector, the education sector, in order to meet those goals, which are very challenging ones. The poverty rate is continuing to fall, down to 23% now, heading on down still. And we want to make sure that that progress is sustained through the hard times immediately ahead.